Welcome, Jay Velez Mitchell here in Los Angeles. We are covering live the trial of 23-year-old Zoe Rosenberg, who could go to prison for up to 5 years for rescuing 4 chickens. This is the end of week 2, day 7. We've got a reporter, Matthew Zerbel, at the courthouse, bringing us the very latest. But before we go to him, let's just give you a very quick overview of all the excitement that's happening. A lot of breaking news. Now, you know that sometimes court is dark. Like yesterday, court was dark. That did not stop the many activists gathered there from Direct Action Everywhere. Look what they did. They had a ceremony/demonstration at a meat counter in a local supermarket.
I love all of you.
So, as this trial drags on, and it is controversial in that local community, the longer the trial takes, I think it would be a fair guess to say the more demonstrations like that this community is going to see. So, that's a factor perhaps that should be considered as this trial drags on. Let's go straight out to Matthew Zerbel, who is live outside the courthouse. Matthew, bring us up to date. What is happening?
Yeah, Jane, well, this week has been another long week, primarily filled with trying to get enough jurors for the trial. We just saw the protest there. There's been a lot of people on both sides talking about the trial, bringing it up, talking about chicken rescues. And that leads us with a very polarized county up here. That means they need a pretty large juror base so that they can get enough jurors who are impartial. So we've had
okay, we got a little
people.
frozen there. Continue on. You froze up for a second. Continue on.
Okay. So we'll have our 4th panel today. Unfortunately, today we were supposed to have our last motion before the trial can begin, talking about what evidence is going to be allowed, who's going to be allowed to talk about what. We've already had Carla be authorized to talk as an expert witness, and Raven, the decision still hanging for that one. Earlier today, we were supposed to have one of Perdue's operatives to talk about a series of documents that Raven had taken pictures of. And we weren't able to have that earlier today because yesterday there had been a bomb threat in a building near here, and that had delayed trial proceedings yesterday, and they pushed into lunch, all unrelated to this trial. But that means that the 402 hearing to talk about what can be presented to the documents found in the slaughterhouse is going to happen instead at 3:30. After our last panel of jurors comes in, prospective jurors comes in.
Wow. A bomb threat unrelated to this case. Cannot repeat that more emphatically. Unrelated to this case. So what I'd like to do, thank you for that, Matthew. Great summary. I'd like to play a couple of clips of what everybody was looking for today, which didn't happen yet because of all that zoom. Let's listen to the Elmira Tanner, who is the lead organizer for Direct Action Everywhere, and the defendant Zoe Rosenberg is an animal cruelty investigator for Direct Action Everywhere. Here's what Elmira was telling supporters around the world would happen today, and then let's talk about it on the other side because a lot of it didn't happen.
Hey everyone, quick update on what happened in court today. Another round of jurors came in, so same drill as last week. We've now called in about 300 prospective jurors, and most of them have been dismissed for hardship, so it's still very difficult to find a jury. More will come in on Thursday. And then there was more conversation about the records that Raven photographed. The judge hasn't made a ruling yet on if they will be admissible, and he did decide that there will be a 402 hearing for the quality assurance manager at Perdue on Thursday at 11 a.m. And in that hearing, we will get more information about these records. Our side will be able to question him and show that he said earlier today in an interview that our attorneys did with him that, yeah, those records look authentic. They are from the slaughterhouse. They look exactly like the ones from the slaughterhouse. So Thursday morning should be interesting.
So that's the big battle. These records, okay, these are not the records, but there's records that they're wanting to get. The defense is wanting to get into the trial before the jury's eyes and ears, that are condemnation records, which are basically the reports that show how many chickens show up dead on arrival, how many chickens have illnesses. This is my understanding. Again, that might not be 100% accurate, but that's a general overview. So that didn't happen. Now, I want to play the defendant herself, Zoe Rosenberg, talking about those documents because, you know, her life is at stake. First of all, she's had type diabetes. She's had a lot of very serious illnesses from childhood. These are not you develop from bad eating habits, but just type 1 diabetes she's had from childhood. She was in the hospital just days before this started, and she's still wearing a little device on her nose because of her health problems. And she has said if she does end up going to jail or prison for up to 5 years or 4.5 years, that it literally could be the end of her life because she's not sure that her health would sustain in behind bars. So let's hear what she has to say about these documents, because she's holding up the documents saying these could be life or death for me.
My prosecutors say that these documents were stolen, and therefore we shouldn't be allowed to show them to the jury.
A lot of jurors are getting hard-shipped out because this trial is going to be like 6 weeks long.
Judge did not rule on the documents. We're actually going to have a whole other hearing on Thursday morning where we will hear testimony from an employee of Perdue. We also had about 84 prospective jurors come in today, and the majority of them were excused for hardships, again, partly because of how long this trial is going to be.
There you see, I want to just get around Robin. Let's start with Renee. All those things that they said, expect. They're talking about today at 11. Well, it's almost 1 o'clock. None of that happened. This trial is moving along at a glacial pace. Imagine the stress. I mean, we feel a little stressed because we keep scrambling. Oh, it's starting. It's not starting. When do we go? Imagine the stress the defendant is under as all this happens, Renee.
I mean, 300 jurors to be interviewed and no one selected. This is pins and needles, you know, and to, you know, for Zoe to be over there with her literal life on the line. These records, these condemnation records are crucial to you know, that they're admitted into the records for this trial. I mean, it's just crucial. It seems like every which way I turn as I'm reviewing and researching this case, it's like they're trying to, it seems like there's a gridlock going on, you know, that, you know, the other side is trying to just lock down any evidence, any records, any past videos. They're just trying to keep all of this from the view of the potential jurors that do get selected. And it just seems like it's going to be very, very biased.
And while we talk about this, let's play a video of the very action for which Zoe Rosenberg is being charged. This happened in June of 2023. Here it is, past June of 2025, 2 years later. She had to wear an ankle bracelet, an ankle monitor for more than 20 months as a result of this action. And the bottom line is she's saying it's a rescue. She rescued 4 chickens who were very seriously ill, sick, and suffering, and that she did this because she tried to report this what she calls criminal animal cruelty to law enforcement for years, and nothing was done. So she felt that she had the legal right to go in there and carry out this rescue. Prosecutors are charging her with conspiracy. That's a felony, along with 3 misdemeanors involving trespass, etc. So there you are. You're seeing the key moment. Now, jurors will see this. Her taking out 4 chickens, she says, are very sick and suffering. Those chickens were later taken care of by Carla Cabral, who now can be an expert witness. That's a big victory for the defense. But the question is, the records, the condemnation records that famed undercover investigator Raven Deerbrook took photographs. Will those be admitted? And so I want to bring in Shaka Smith, who has just joined us. Shaka, these condemnation records that purportedly show birds arriving dead and also birds arriving sick. And this was what Raven Deerbrook took photographs of, these records. The question is, because she took photos of them inside the facility, for 3 months, she went in there before that rescue occurred, and she documented whatever she could find, including these records. These apparently there's USDA records, and then there's other records that show condemnation of birds and other issues about the conditions of the birds. So, what's your take? Will they be allowed in or not?
My take is there is a good chance it could be allowed in. Essentially, the argument is this information that went to Zoe was essentially hearsay. But we do have hearsay exceptions, and one of those is state of mind exception, just to not show the truth of the matter, but to show what the state of the mind of the person that she was in when she decided to go ahead and rescue these chickens. So I think there's a good chance it could be allowed in under a hearsay exception.
Very interesting point that you think it's going to be allowed in, not so much for the content, like, look, jurors, look at the condition of these animals, but more like, look, jurors, here's the mental state of the defendant as she went in to carry out that rescue. Here's why she thought it was necessary. Tiffany, you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I agree. I like what Shaka said. If it shows her state of mind, it's not, that sounds like it shows her state of mind leading up to the action that she took. So the documents don't have to exactly be authenticated, but they can be used for hearsay. So I like that. I hope that the judge, pins and needles. I can't even imagine how Zoe's feeling.
And the judge himself, Judge Noss, said, I think that's how you pronounce it, he himself said that this is a very crucial issue for both sides. In a way, Lindsay Baker, it seems like the trial, all the most crucial battles are being fought even before the jury is selected.
That's true. That's true, because as the judge said, it's such a crucial point for both sides. But within that statement, I see also that it almost is an admission that if it was admitted in as testimony, then it would be damning. And if it's supposedly nothing to hide, that all of the charges are denied by Perdue and Petaluma Farms, then what's the big secret? Why not let us see it? And you could look at it in terms of what is I guess, I don't know that's the part that's confusing, because they'd say, well, there's a normal amount of chickens that die. I'm sure there's some sort of standard. So how would that be figured out? That's what comes to mind to me. Maybe Shaka can address that.
Yeah, Shaka. In other words, I'm sure that the prosecution, if these are allowed, that the prosecution would want to try to put it in context, to say, and let's just be real here. On this planet, 140,000 chickens are slaughtered every minute of the day. More than 75 billion chickens are slaughtered every year on this planet. The vast majority of animals killed, all told, are chickens. So this is why this is such an important case. If you look at this list, chickens are right at the top. More than 75 billion killed in 2022. Land animals alone. Chickens, the vast majority of the animals killed. So obviously, there's going to be a death toll. And that's not me condoning the killing of 75 billion. It's simply me saying that that's obvious that it would have to be that if you were going to kill that many animals. And that's part of, what is said is that there's no nice way to kill animals who don't want to die. And that's a judgment that the activists are saying. It's no animal should die. So Shaka, weigh in on all of this.
Well, I think the key part is, and I forget what case it was where I think someone was actually, they were acquitted when they went to go rescue the chickens. I think a key part of it was they didn't take all the chickens. And I think with Zoe, she didn't take all the chickens. She left some there. So it was about the mistreatment and about the health and welfare of chickens that were being treated poorly. So I think it's going to speak to her case that, this wasn't free all the chickens, no chickens should die. This was we need to rescue these particular chickens who are being mistreated in the situation.
That's a very good point. And I want to say that we actually have video of that prior case that you're referring to with Baywatch actress Alexandra Paul and another animal activist named Alicia Santorio. And they, very similar action. They took these two chickens off a slaughter truck and they were put on trial and they were ultimately acquitted. But I will say that the prosecution has learned from these cases. And that's one of the reasons why they didn't charge Zoe Rosenberg with theft, it's believed. That they charged her only with conspiracy and trespass and tampering with a vehicle and things of that nature. Because once you get the theft in, you can really start talking about the conditions of the animals more. And it appears the prosecution is really trying to limit the condition of the animals. That's why the condemnation records are so absolutely crucial, because if they get to introduce those, that's just going to kind of speak for itself. And before I get to that, I want to always give the company side of this story and invite them on anytime. Perdue says they have no cages or crates, that their animals have freedom to express normal behavior, that they have high animal welfare standards. You can go to corporate.perduefarms.com/responsibility/animal-care. And they say that they give their animals the highest animal welfare standards and call DXE an extreme group with the ultimate goal of ending animal agriculture altogether and imposing a radical agenda. We invite Perdue, Petaluma on anytime. I want to go back very quickly to, we've got Matthew. Matthew, can you hear us? And what is the latest there? Is there any movement at all? What's going to happen this afternoon?
Yeah, no change since earlier, but what will happen this afternoon is we're pulling in the last panel of prospective jurors to screen them for any potential hardships that they might have. It's such a long trial, not many people are able to take off that amount of time. Once we get that final set, we should be able to go into actually questioning to see whether there are enough jurors without bias that can try in this case.
When do we expect opening statements?
Opening statements will be after jury selection concludes, which most likely will be late next week. It's very hard to say for sure. There are so many challenging parts of the case. If the judge needs more time to make a final written statement on Raven Deerbook's ability to testify, that could take longer. And of course, it could depend on how long it takes to select the actual jury itself.
A lot of variables. And once again, we have made a commitment to cover this every single day. And we're the only news organization doing that. So one of the reasons we're doing that is that this allows us to have a window into the whole issue of industrialized animal agriculture in the 21st century. And what is our government doing? Is it playing a neutral role, or is it essentially an arm of industrialized animal agriculture? we hear over and over again, and there was a glossy that was handed out, a glossy brochure sent to, well, DXE is claiming everybody in Sonoma County, which would be the entire jury pool, saying stand with Sonoma County's poultry workers and decrying this radical agenda. But then you have, on the other hand, the activists saying the radical agenda is killing 75 billion chickens every year, and there's no nice way to do that. And to that end, they have put out this footage. This is from Direct Action Everywhere of what they say they have videotaped inside the Petaluma / Perdue facilities. And again, we always invite Perdue, Petaluma on any time to discuss all of these issues. They say they have the highest standards of care for their birds. On the other side, this is the video that Direct Action Everywhere says it videotaped undercover, and sometimes they go in with open rescue. Essentially, what the defendant is saying is that she tried to report what she calls criminal animal cruelty, because there are animal cruelty laws on the books in California, and that over and over again, law enforcement completely ignored her. And that's one of the reasons why she took it upon herself to go in and take these 4 chickens out. She's saying that this is evidence right now that you're looking at, that chickens get boiled alive when they're moving and they have not been properly stunned because of the high speed. Again, that's denied by Perdue Petaluma Poultry. Let's listen to what Zoe said about all of this.
It has been many, many years now of reporting criminal animal cruelty at a number of factory farms and facilities in Sonoma County to authorities. In particular, the company involved in my case, that company has been reported by Direct Action Everywhere investigators since 2018.
This one needs help.
Since 2018, people have over and over again reported rampant criminal misconduct, including birds being left to slowly die without access to food and water due to illnesses and disabilities that prevented them from walking to food and water. Evidence of birds being boiled alive at the slaughterhouse. And all we've really received is dismissive emails, people trying to direct us to another agency, and then that agency directing us back to the agency that directed us to them, and people just sending us in circles, and nobody actually taking us seriously. It's almost felt like they're just making a mockery of these animals who are suffering in such a severe way. And that's really why I did what I did, because in the end of the day, if the authorities won't act when animals are being criminally mistreated, what else are you supposed to do but intervene and help the animals yourself?
That is her explanation. That's what she'd like to be able to tell the jury, but she won't be able to show those videos while she's making that case if she's allowed to talk about. I think she will be allowed to, because it's her state of mind. It's just a question of how much of that will she be able to get in. So Paige, is that one of the reasons why the condemnation records are so crucial? And it still hasn't been decided. It was supposed to be decided, with a 402 hearing with a Perdue quality assurance manager today. That got pushed back. Everything keeps getting pushed back. But I would think that because the videos of their investigation stemming back to 2018 cannot be shown to the jury, that makes the condemnation records all that more important.
Absolutely, Jane. These records are so essential because they give the validity of the reason for and the intent for, but also I think the importance of these for the public and for the jurors is that it gives an outside source. These are not condemnation reports done by activists. These reports are done by, if I'm correct, right? That are done by experts in that
Wait, say
jurisdiction to
again what
make
you
those.
were saying. I was putting up what did you say?
I just said that those are the experts are the ones who have made those reports. Am I right?
Yes, the condemnation
Exactly.
records are not made by the animal activists. What happened is a renowned activist and undercover investigator by the name of by the name of Raven Deerbrook. There she is. She's famous. She's been in the New York Times and all sorts of publications for her really daring exposés. For example, she went into a pig slaughterhouse here in Los Angeles and climbed.
We lost you, Jane.
The area where they gas the pigs to death, the gas chamber, and she almost lost her life, documenting on video how those pigs are killed. And she got out just, literally with moments to spare. She thought she was going to die. That's how she became famous. That's how she became a renowned animal cruelty investigator, undercover investigator. And it's believed that that's one of the reasons why that particular slaughterhouse closed, because of her action. And it was purportedly the only time that a pig slaughter gas chamber has ever been videotaped. Okay. So she went in for 3 months, April, May, June. And this happened in June of 2023, this rescue of the 4 chickens. And she went in the preceding 3 months and took photos. And some of the photos she took were of these condemnation records. And also, I believe, we'll see in court, USDA records that show how many birds show up dead on arrival, how many birds have XYZ. And those are the records that are in this massive tug of war. It was supposed to happen at 11 o'clock this morning, but it keeps getting pushed back. So to answer your question.
Yeah, what I was going to say is the importance of those records are from the actual place of establishment, the processing plant, right? So those records are seen as expert records. So what I'm saying is that those will show that if those animals were not due for condemnation, if I'm understanding correctly, then those animals were going to die perhaps on the kill floor right there as it is, but they were suffering. So if I'm putting 2 and 2 and 2 together, it seems to make sense. Those are very important records to be available for the jury to be able to decide without a bunch of twisting of the truth of what is so about those chickens, the condition of the chickens at that time.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm going to translate a little bit, because I think the point you're trying to make is that if these were records that were compiled, actually typed up or whatever by the animal activists, then the jury and the prosecutor could say it's biased records. These are records that were slanted and written up to make this place look bad. These records were compiled by either the government and or the facility itself, then for objectivity to those records, and then the jury can analyze them and say, okay, this is the situation happening inside this slaughterhouse. And now I understand more why Zoe went in and did what she did. Renee, you want to comment on that?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm just, the fact of the matter is Perdue and companies like them profit from a system that kills, to your point, 75 billion chickens globally every year. And that scale will only work if the public doesn't see the reality behind these numbers. The industry's model depends on invisibility. And as long as these chickens remain abstract units, pounds of broiler meat instead of sentient beings, the system keeps on trucking. If people connect to the suffering or systemic abuse, then it's going to demand collapse. The demand will collapse. That's why even one high-profile case like this matters. It risks exposing the contradictions between how these animals are actually treated and the carefully crafted marketing of humane or all natural or whatever. And Perdue and companies like this cannot allow a crack in the wall. If condemnation records, investigative videos, or testimony from the rescuers themselves are admitted as legitimate courtroom evidence, that's going to open the door for future trials where systemic cruelty is scrutinized in front of juries. So what's going to happen? They've got to maintain narrative control. Perdue spends millions on PR to protect itself as a family-run animal care brand. Of course, it's all on their website. Allowing jurors to see official condemnations, sick, suffering birds, and insider footage will shatter that narrative. And so, in my opinion, official condemnation records or testimony that animals were diseased, mistreated, or neglected could raise regulatory red flags beyond this trial. It could expose Perdue not only to criminal scrutiny, but also, in my opinion, to civil liability, which could really, really cost them. They are invested in not allowing a crack in the wall, and they will spend the money, in my opinion, to do it.
Okay, again, we invite the companies and agencies involved in this case on at any time. We would love to dialogue with you. And to that point, I want to go back to Matthew at the court. We were talking yesterday that the prosecution actually asked the defense witnesses when they get to the witness stand, are you vegan? Is that something that you've heard? And if so, what are your thoughts, or how did that resonate inside the court?
Yeah, they did indeed ask that. I think the overall goal of the prosecution is to discredit Zoe. They want Zoe's main claim here is that she knew that animals were being mistreated horribly inside of the slaughterhouse, and that she therefore had to go and fix the emergency to the extent that she was able to. And so to her ability to say that, documents proving her right are very important to her. And if people have taken photos of those documents, if they can impugn their credibility in any way, that is what they need to do to try and prevent those documents from entering, because those documents are the ones that can objectively speak to whether Zoe was correct or not. Knowing what she knew, what she saw beforehand, that's all useful, but our ability to actually present the documents and say, she's correct. The prosecution will try and pull any little thing she didn't know, anything that she's ever not heard of, any little thing she could be wrong about. But if the documents at the end of the day can show that she was correct about her main central claims from the industry, then that's pretty irrefutable proof that she knew what she was talking about. And that's the reason why they're trying to bring up, are you vegan? Have you gone to, they were trying to ask if they had gone to protests against Perdue for all of the witnesses that Zoe's trying to bring in. Fortunately, they weren't allowed to do that, except to the extent that it really was relevant, which has not come up.
So they're asking questions like, are you vegan? Have you gone to animal rights protests? Anything else that you could think of that it's trying to establish them as what Perdue has actually said? He believes members of DXE are radicals with a radical agenda, extremists with a radical agenda. It seems like the prosecution is trying to paint that picture. What were some of the other questions that might, and remember, this is before the jury. This is not with the jury present. We haven't even seated a jury. The jury hasn't been seated, and this trial's been going on for 2 weeks. It just shows you the stakes here. But yeah, for those of us who are not in court, and there's no cameras on the court or video, any other questions that when you hear them, you go, that's interesting? Because they don't ask the people who aren't vegan, are you a meat eater, right?
No, they haven't. I mean, the witnesses that they've called up to establish whether or not they can testify as experts have been on the defense side thus far. So they're not asking those questions. Their goal is just to determine, do you have the credentials? And so the main question that the prosecution has been asking is, do you have this credential? Do you have that credential? Even if the credential isn't one that you really need to be able to understand the issue. They were asking Carla, are you certified as a veterinarian? She's certified as a vet tech, and she has a long experience working with animals. But they list every single certification that she could possibly have that could help her with animals. She has to say, no, I don't have the certification. No, I don't have that certification. Even when it's not relevant, needing to list out a long list of certifications that she does not have, despite being qualified, is the prosecution's goal to claim that she's not qualified to speak to what the actual conditions of the chickens were. And they lost this case because Carla did have a lot of certification, did have a long history of caring for chickens, rescuing chickens, and being able to identify and treat them. We'll see how it goes with Raven.
And to the judge's credit, the judge actually said he was very impressed with Carla Cabral's knowledge. And again, the judge himself has said this trial could go on through the end of October. And, it's a lot. It's a lot that we have to go through every day to try to get this amazing team together of attorneys and experts who have a lot of stuff to do, but they're making this time commitment because this trial is such a watershed moment. I often say, I've covered a lot of big trials. I've covered, everything from OJ to Michael Jackson, Casey Anthony, Jodi Arias, Robert Blake. The list goes on and on. I've covered all those big trials as a crime journalist, which I was for many years. And one thing I'll tell you, you can never tell which way a high stakes trial will go, Shaka, because there's just too many moving parts. A high profile trial, like a celebrity trial, which is pretty much what I covered, there's too many. I would say it's like an out of control freight train. To me, this case is sort of showing those signs. Not that Zoe's a celebrity, although she's kind of becoming one as this trial progresses every day. Everybody's talking Zoe, Zoe, Zoe. She was in the New York Times. She's been in the LA Times, did an op-ed. The Sanford, there's been a lot of media coverage. So she is becoming a celebrity. Shaka, from your knowledge of trials, could this end up having that celebrity trial dynamic where you don't know what's going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. But I would say this much. When it comes to like jury selection, if we're really able to hone in on how that jury is being selected, we may have an idea of the way it could go. Especially what we'll know about what evidence is going to be allowed in. So I'm really interested to see how they question the jurors, what peremptory challenges they use, and who gets on that jury panel.
I think that's a really important point because actually it was mentioned by Elmira Tanner, the lead organizer for DXC, her concern that as this trial drags on and people who are not like seriously invested one way or another, let's say for the most obvious example, another poultry farmer, right? That person might want to be on the juror because they want to make a point because they have a very strong feeling about it. As the jury selection drags on, and as the judge said, this trial could go on for weeks. A lot of people who don't feel strongly might really use hardship to try to get out of it, leaving us. And I'll throw it to Tiffany. You're a former law enforcement investigator. Could this end up leaving us with a jury that is not just a jury of your peers, a jury of 12? And they probably have alternates, so 14, whatever, basically unbiased people who are just going to listen to the evidence. Your thoughts?
Yes, and also concerns regarding Measure J. I believe there's a question regarding if they feel strongly about Measure J on the jury questionnaire. But yeah, if there's some folks that it was very contentious, the Measure J to end the CAFOs up there, the large factory farmers. And some people might still feel very strongly and maybe won't be honest on the questionnaire, or like you said, when it gets down to slim pickings. So
yeah. And we've got comments from the public. Somebody said, and we could probably explain why this is a bad idea, but they were saying maybe somebody should stand outside the courthouse with truth boxes, meaning cubes of truth, playing footage showing atrocities. Mike, everybody's thinking and commenting, and I love it. And please comment and share out. But first of all, once the jury's selected, you would have a mistrial if they were subjected to evidence that hasn't been allowed in court while they're running the gauntlet to get into court. That's my prediction. So you don't, unless you want to have a mistrial, you wouldn't want to do that. I think that the people at Direct Action Everywhere have been, from what I've seen, very careful to say, do not influence the jury, the potential jury. When they were sitting there, they were instructed, do not talk to potential jurors, because there's a lot of supporters of Direct Action Everywhere in there in the court, and they go in a group and they make a point of not talking to the jurors. They don't want to influence the jurors. So that would be a reason why something like that wouldn't work. But again, that's not stopping Direct Action Everywhere, that has dozens of people up there, from doing very creative protests every day that court is dark. I will play this very short clip again of what they did just yesterday at a local supermarket.
I love all of you.
So I want to get Renee King-Sonnen. What is your reaction to that protest? Because I tried to keep the faces of the supermarket workers who were standing there in amazement, just staring at this protest. What is your analysis of the effectiveness of that protest?
Well, you know, I look at it like this. It takes all of us, and at the center of the wheel is animal liberation, because this planet belongs to all of us, and it takes every spoke in the wheel to make it happen. And this kind of animal rights action must happen. That's one of the spokes that must be demonstrated. We must be faced with what we're actually consuming. I believe when people go into grocery stores and they go to reach for a package of drumsticks or chicken breast or a rump roast, they need to have people there reminding them of who this was, who their mother was, who their siblings were. I mean, people are so absent in their mind when they go to buy flesh products at grocery stores. And that's what these are. They're flesh products. And they all had families. They all were living in a community somewhere, and they were all disrupted terribly. So I believe actions like this need to happen whether people like it or not.
And, you know, it's very interesting you should say that, because there seems to be a line of agreement between the company that has denied all allegations of cruelty and says essentially the defendant and Direct Action Everywhere wants to shut down animal agriculture. And, you know, to that point, they are correct. The point of Direct Action Everywhere is that there's no need to kill and eat 75 billion animals in industrialized animal agriculture ever. And I think the difference is the word industrialized. You know, if you think back even 200 years prior to the Industrial Revolution, or when it was just getting started, animals were walking around on rolling hills and they were free. Sure, they met a horrible end, but the industrialization of animal agriculture has taken the suffering to another level. In other words, those folks at DXE and animal activists in general say the system is inherently cruel. The system itself is cruel. And the very notion of industrialized production of animals is cruel. Thoughts on that, Lindsay?
Well, you know, there's kind of two parts to that. As far as this case goes, there's the part of, are people still going to keep eating chicken, right? So there's two things to convince. First, the way industrialization works is extremely cruel. And then two is, should we be eating them at all? And I think we have to focus on the industrialization and the cruelty that with this particular case, because it's much easier for people to look at that footage and say, we don't care how they do it, but they have to change what they're doing. this is just outrageous. And the mere fact that if people were able to see the footage, the jurors, there's no question that they would have to agree that this is not acceptable for all of the reasons we've talked about. I do have one quick question, though, I wanted to ask. Would it be possible if they can't find jurors after a certain amount of time? Would that be possible for them to throw the case out because they can't try it because if they can't find the jurors? Is that a possibility?
Shaka, what do you have to say to that?
I've never seen a case where they couldn't find the jurors, where they couldn't seat them, unless, they'd have to move because there was so much bias in the particular community, they might have to switch venues. So if they somehow could not seat a jury panel, they would just switch venues.
And in fact, that happened with an activist in New York where she basically a cow escaped from a neighboring farm and went into her farmed animal sanctuary, and she kept the cow. And for various reasons, she said that the farmer didn't offer her proof that the animal was indeed his, that he didn't reimburse her for the hay and all the expense that she took when the animal came onto her property. But ultimately, there was such a hate campaign against her that they had to change venue and try her in another community. So very interesting. And the case fell apart. The case fell apart and she walked free and did not do any time, even though she was shackled. She was shackled by her legs and her arms when she was originally arrested. Another case that we covered that I think will go down in animal rights history. All of these cases will. Let me say this. I think it's important to say that, yes, this case, according to Direct Action Everywhere, is putting all of industrialized animal agriculture on trial. Is this particular facility an outlier? I would say absolutely not. In other words, they're not. The defense is not suggesting that this is the only facility doing something wrong. And indeed, a lot of their claims that as what they call cage-free is defined, these animals are cage-free. Okay, as the powers that be define freedom to express normal behavior,
that's crazy.
They could be considered because the people who are auditing and verifying are part of the system. They're not really asking chickens, how do you feel in this particular situation? Again, the California Poultry Federation claims that Petaluma Poultry has been a leader in free-range and organic poultry and known for taking great care of their birds. What I think the greater issue is industrialized animal agriculture in general and the mass killing of 75 billion chickens every year. Can that be done in a way that is humane? This is, I think, the fundamental question. And of course, I think everybody who is on this panel would say, no, correct me if I'm wrong, that the system itself is morally reprehensible. And there's been many, many campaigns against other facilities where there have been similar trials, and activists have said the society needs to start prosecuting industrialized animal agriculture, not the people pointing out that there's something wrong with industrialized animal agriculture.
Sonoma County District Attorney.
Instead of prosecuting rescuers and whistleblowers, prosecute this.
On November 2nd, a jury in Sonoma County, California, convicted Wayne Shung, the co-founder of Direct Action Everywhere, of 3 trespass charges associated with the rescue of sick and dying ducks and chickens in factory farms. Now, advocates around the world are asking why the Sonoma County District Attorney prosecuted a person who was lawfully helping desperate animals instead of the factory farmers engaging in criminal animal abuse. Here's what New Yorkers have to say about this miscarriage of justice.
Sonoma County District Attorney.
You have evidence of animals with painful injuries who are starving to death right now because they have no access to food and water.
Animal
Animals are being criminally abused at Duck Farm in Petaluma.
What steps are you taking to investigate and stop the rampant criminal animal cruelty in your animal factories?
How can you ignore the horrific abuse of thousands of animals in your jurisdiction?
Sonoma County District Attorney.
When will you stop looking the other way and prosecute this?
I'm appalled that you sent an animal rescuer to jail when all he did was try to help the victims who your office is neglecting. Sonoma County District Attorney.
Prosecute this.
Prosecute this. Prosecute this.
Prosecute this. Prosecute this.
Prosecute this.
Prosecute this.
And that was from Their Turn. I mean, this was videotaped a long time ago because it was Wayne Shung was convicted and sentenced. He was sentenced on the very day that Zoe Rosenberg was arrested. And so there is a sort of a link between each one of these cases as they go on. So I want to thank Matthew for bringing us the latest from court. He said his phone died. He's out there doing yeoman's work, and they're going to get on in a second. But the point is that the day you're looking at Zoe getting arrested is the same day that Wayne Shung was sentenced and put in jail. And after Wayne got put in jail, Zoe and her team of Direct Action Everywhere members and supporters marched to the sheriff's office to report what she maintains is criminal animal cruelty at factory farms in Sonoma County. And at that point, instead of taking the report that she was trying to hand in, they arrested her and charged her with the action that occurred earlier, this action. So there's a continuum between all these cases. They're not isolated cases. If you look at it big picture, and we'll wrap with this because I know it's been quite a while, but it's a fascinating case. If you look at the big picture, this is really a battle over the future of industrialized animal agriculture. And is industrialized animal agriculture okay or not? And if I want to just show you the reaction of law enforcement to some of the actions that Direct Action Everywhere has undertaken when there were what they call open rescues at some of these facilities. If you take a look at the police turnout to the protest demonstrations and open rescues of animals at factory farms, again, this is not connected to this case in particular. This is about the overall movement of open rescue versus criminality. Is it rescue? Is it criminality? Look at where law enforcement stands. Okay, look at that turnout. These are people who are holding peace signs, flowers, guitars, singing, and yes, going in there, some of them, and taking animals out that they say are sick and suffering that law enforcement refused to investigate, cases that law enforcement refused to investigate. So when you look at that, there's no doubt where the establishment stands when it comes to how, industrialized animal agriculture. I think the big argument is that it's a necessity, but is it a necessity or is it something that is really hurting our environment and to a certain degree our health? I mean, animal agriculture is a leading cause of climate change. So is it really a necessity? Let's do a final thoughts and we'll let it go for today because Monday's going to be a big day. There's no court tomorrow and we're back Monday at, I think we're going to be probably at 12:30. Paige, I'll let you start.
Well, I want to circle back to the activists in the grocery store as my final thoughts, because the point of it could be seen as extreme that they're in the grocery store. Because I was thinking about, as a consumer who lives in that town where I know that there is, the chickens are being raised and they're being slaughtered, and that I'm eating it, right? Let's just see if I was a general consumer. However, I would hope that, because it's very peaceful, and essentially what I saw also, if I were able to see two sides of it, take a moment and think, why are these people spending this time doing this? I would want to look deeper into it. I think I would, because that would be such a disruption to my day that I would leave thinking, well, that was interesting. They weren't yelling at me. They were just pounding a drum nicely. Like, that was a nice sound. And there's some informationals. I never knew this. I think I would leave curious. And that's what I think that could be very effective in the town. The more that they move through and do these peaceful actions to show, it might be extreme actions, but we're not extremists. In other words, they are taking extreme actions to show people the truth, because the truth isn't being shown to them on a daily basis.
Well, I think it's probably going to be split. Some people would be very irritated and, the usual negative comments. Other people might be inspired to look more. It really depends. Final thought, Renee, for today.
Oh gosh, it is not a necessity. Absolutely. Thus, the essential nutrients that we need can be obtained from plants. Every major nutrition authority, from the Academy of Nutrition, and all these dietetic associations, has stated that well-planned vegan diets are nutritionally adequate for all stages of life. So, it is definitely not a necessity. It's linked to chronic diseases. Diets heavy in animal products are tied to heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and obesity. Whole food, plant-based diets, by contrast, lower the risk, and in some cases even reverse disease. So all this protein, yada, 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 is just a myth. We can get all the protein we need from legumes, grains, nuts, seeds, vegetables, all of that. We can get plenty of protein. So that's my thought on the whole deal about it.
All right, final thought. Let's go to Shaka. What's your final thought? We see you. We see you.
I don't think he can hear us.
Okay, he might not hear us. Tiffany, why don't you jump in?
I'm just thinking about who's extreme. The animal agriculture is going to such extreme, just spending all this money on our money on taxpayer dollars, and we can't even see. They're not even going to show. They're objecting to every piece of evidence. It makes you wonder who's extreme. They're doing everything they can to prevent us from seeing what's going on in these so-called humane facilities. So sending out this fancy flyer and objecting to all of the evidence, it's just, I wonder who's extreme. And my heart goes out to Zoe if she has to wait all weekend to find out about, it sounds like they're not going to rule on this. The judge isn't going to rule on these records until Monday. Is that what it is?
It's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. But yeah, probably if they're going to do jury selection this afternoon, some, try to do jury selection. I don't know. It's impossible to predict. Final thought, Lindsay Baker.
Well, industrialized agriculture is on trial. That's the key here. And if, God forbid, things go south, and I pray and pray they don't, there will be another case coming soon. This will not go away. And I think these meat manufacturers have to face the truth that they have to change what they're doing. They have to provide for public safety an alternative food supply. Even just with the databases that are coming in, the amount of pollution they're bringing in, our planet cannot sustain 8 billion people rapidly growing. There has to be change. They need to wake up. We're knocking on the door right here. Animal agriculture, we are knocking on the door.
Thank you, Lindsay. Okay, let's try Shaka. Okay, we can't hear you, unfortunately, Shaka, but we'll go out to Matthew and see if we can get you on the other side. Matthew, what are your final thoughts today?
Yeah, we had to move a little further from the courthouse because the jury is trickling in. and so we don't want to be disrupting any jurors. But I was kind of reflecting on just how absurd the whole thing is in some sense. When you step back and look at it, the strongest thing that Zoe is being charged with here is a trespass or conspiracy to trespass. And from the perspective of a potential juror, we're asking them to take maybe 6 weeks out of their job, out of their life, to go look through all of this evidence just to say, did she trespass? It's not the kind of thing that we otherwise would look to pull so many jurors in, usually. It's a big disruption for them, and I don't think it's worth it. I think you can see from the state that they're having a pretty large overreaction.
Thank you, Matthew. And I don't know, is Yashira there by any chance? Would she want to comment?
Yeah, I can go find her. She's nearby if you want to switch to someone else first.
Oh, okay. I just was very happy to see Yashira, who's somebody else who's there for the duration of the trial, was going to also be one of our reporters, bringing us the latest from inside court. Again, there are no cameras in court. By the way, Unchained TV did apply to be the pool camera. All right, here's Yashira. She's putting on the earbuds. I would love to get Yashira's thoughts on it. Come a little closer, my dear, and if you could just give us your thoughts about, this is 2 weeks, the end of week 2 right now. We're going to give you the final word.
Yeah, I think so far it's been pretty slow with everything that's happening, but definitely I think that one of the highlights was hearing Carla testify and Braden, and from what I feel like the judge is pretty decent and pretty fair, and I'm very hopeful about what's coming up.
Thank you, Yashira, and thank you for taking the time to be here today. I know she helped behind the scenes, so we appreciate you. I think we used your phone as well. Yeah, she's saying that the judge seems pretty fair. So that's good news, because that's really a basic, to have a fair judge who's trying to navigate this extremely controversial and extremely complicated case. So we're going to say goodbye today, and we're going to be back Monday, I would say 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern, to give people a chance to get out of court. Do we want to give Shaka one more shot? Come on, Shaka. Let's see if you can do it this time. Well, maybe I don't think it's working right now, but what we'll do is we'll work on it. We'll bring you back Monday. Hopefully we'll have you Monday, because it's great to have an attorney. Thank you, everybody. We really hope that everybody shares these videos out. That's super important. And, we also need to say that all this is being brought to you by Unchained TV. We are a 501c3 nonprofit streaming television network that is absolutely free. You can get it on your phone, or you can go online, unchained.tv, and watch this coverage. We have every single day in a category for Zoe. With that, we are going to sign off, and we will see you on Monday.